Welcome to Invested Souls, the podcast where real estate expertise meets relationship growth.
And we're your hosts, the Flanagans. I'm Brad.
And I'm Jamie. This podcast is your chance to learn from our experiences and follow in our footsteps. Whether you're an entrepreneur, investor, or real estate professional, we've got the insights and strategies to help you elevate your wealth and achieve financial freedom.
But it's not just all about real estate. We believe that thriving in life means nurturing the relationships that matter most.
That's right. We'll be talking about how to balance your personal and professional life so you can create a fulfilling and prosperous future.
So join us on Invested Souls and let's grow together in wealth, relationships, and success.
Ready to elevate your life? Let's get started. Welcome to Invested Souls.
All right, friends, welcome to Invested Souls. I'm on today with Tyler Gibson, dedicated real estate professional, over 10 years in the investing side of the business, helping sellers maximize their opportunities in the Florida market because of his creativity, his specialty, and his active participation in the market as a buyer and seller himself. So, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been fantastic to get to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So excited to be here today.
Awesome, awesome. So, one of the things we were just chatting about real quickly as we get started is this shift from being a seller's market to a buyer's market and the challenges that really real estate, not real estate, but the economic climate, the interest rates create for buyers, sidelining people, maybe creating a challenge to uh, see the opportunity in the next deal, right? Because they got that interest rate change. You sound like you're actively working to help overcome the challenges that some of the sellers are finding. Any insights that you can share on that?
Yeah, so Central Florida has become a little bit of a softer market. It's definitely a buyer's market today. And so we keep screaming from the rooftop to all of our investor clients. Now's a great time to try to be in the market. There's tons of inventory. And I just continue to encourage my buyer clients, just make an offer, any offer, whatever you feel comfortable with, because you have no idea what's going on the other side of the transaction. But I almost guarantee that if somebody is selling today, it's not because they want to, it's because they need to. There's
Ooh.
something going on in their life that they need to move on from that particular piece of property. And so as an investor or somebody that, is helping buyers, we can use that to your advantage just by being aggressive, making any kind of offer. Even if they say no, hopefully it'll at least begin a dialogue and we could potentially get you a great deal. But on the seller side of things, if you're needing to sell in this current market, then we need to be creative. We need to know how to make your property stand out so you don't have 90, 100 days on market. People start questioning whether or not there's something wrong with your property. And now all of a sudden you're getting all of the really lowball offers. And so just trying to help people navigate this market from both sides of the spectrum. There is opportunity no matter where you're at. It just kind of depends on everyone's unique situation, but we can certainly help people navigate that.
Do you see, having the investor mindset, do you see a lot of second home and maybe vacation rental opportunities still popping up for somebody who's maybe not accustomed or just is interested in Florida but isn't there physically?
Yeah, I mean, the Disney market here in Orlando has always been a vacation rental home area, lots of Airbnbs. I will say that that market has actually been really affected by the rise in interest rates. And in fact, we saw a huge boom in values during COVID. A lot of that was driven by the fact that Florida was one of the few places where you could go and not social distance, right? We were wide open. You didn't have to wear a mask here. And so we saw a lot of people vacationing here. That drove, average nightly rates and those short-term rentals up significantly because the demand was so high. And so we saw prices climb through the roof as well. That coupled with super low interest rates during 2021, prices just got out of control. And we've seen that market completely reset. In fact, there's one community where I had a client that had bought during the boom of 21, and he called and said, "Hey, I think I'm ready to sell this. I'm making better money over here. I'd like to move my equity." And when we looked at the comparables, he would have to take close to $150,000 loss compared to where he purchased just in comparable purchase prices. So we were able, because he had a low interest rate mortgage on the property, we were able to use some creative structures and use a seller wrap mortgage to offer seller financing on the property, which allowed an investor to come in and buy it at an interest rate that was attractive at 6.5% interest, as opposed to the 8 or 9% they might pay on a second home or a DSCR or something like that. And we were actually able to sell that house for $700,000 in a market where comparables would have left us at 550. And fortunately for us, the seller was the bank. So it didn't matter what the comps were. He had run it really, really well as a short-term rental. So he had great revenue on the back end to show. And so it worked out really well for him. He got to sell it for a premium. He's actually making monthly, he's receiving monthly payments from them. He got most of his equity out of the property. And at the end of the day, I think they actually hired him to run it, to continue to run it as a short-term rental. So now he's making money there as well. That's a unique scenario, but just, kind of a really unique story of how we've leveraged both the investor side and the retail real estate side of what we've learned over the last few years to help people win even in this uncertain market.
Well, and it's a testament to like the ability to navigate in the complex, right? This environment. And what I'm finding is that the thinning that has taken place in our industry as professionals is due to somebody who maybe can't navigate the complex as well, which I've gotten a lot of mixed feedback from consumers and from real estate professionals, because I'm, of course, on the mortgage side, that they're feeling lots of difference in the variance or the ability of one professional to the next right now. And that's going to continue to impact the level of service that each customer, each homeowner, seller, buyer receives, and even investors, because they still, if they're not real estate professionals, are dependent on those of us that are impacting the strategy that they get to employ. And it's really interesting too, because there's opportunities for buyers, right? Like we were just literally in the introduction, where you can potentially negotiate a better deal, and then sellers being doom or gloom, but you had the opportunity to help them actually get above market value in today's environment because of the right strategy. So it just really is conviction over and over again that it's all about perspective. If you go into it with this energy of it's just not going to work out, it's doom and gloom, then that's likely what the outcome's going to reflect as well. I don't know if it's too much, but if I went into it like, does faith and like mindset play a role in the technical side of what you're doing too? Your performance, your results, the outcomes?
It's a good question. I grew up in a family of faith. My parents were actually missionaries, so I grew up overseas. I lived in Mexico for a large chunk of my childhood. So my faith is a big part of who I am. If it weren't for my faith, I probably would have quit this industry a long time ago, because every once in a while you wake up with your head in your hands thinking, how am I going to make this all work? So it's definitely a component. A person's mindset is a big factor in this industry, because you're going to lose as often as you win, and sometimes more often.
Mhm.
And so you have to be able to just have a strong mindset, knowing that this is just part of what it is. I got to get through so many no's before I'm going to get to the yes. And deals fall apart at the last minute. If I lose my stuff, if I become a puddle of goo because of it, I can't continue to serve my clients. And they went through the exact same thing, right? The deal just fell apart on them too. If I fall apart, who's going to help us continue to move forward? And so, yeah, I have, that backbone of faith has helped me endure the struggles of this industry. Everybody's got their own coping mechanisms. Maybe that's just mine. But, prayer has helped me get through some of these times and spaces, because there was nothing else that I could do outside of that. And sometimes there are just factors that are outside of our control, and we just have to figure out how to stay committed and stay consistent and continue to move forward.
For sure. I found like the evolution in 20 years of being in this business is something I never really thought I might say, but I guess I'm here. I've looked at, like you said, you like lose or you get a challenge. I've looked at those like actually opportunities to identify the areas that I need to potentially strengthen, get more familiar and get more comfortable, because that's really all that it is. It's like the discomfort. There's somebody who's uncomfortable approaching their seller and asking them to explore what seller financing looks like. And so they lose that opportunity to put a deal together to help their seller win because they weren't comfortable in it. And it's just like sometimes we need to go through that experience, brave the challenge, and see what we're going to learn for it. Because it's funny, I was at church on Sunday, and that was literally the message is like the challenges are not a punishment. It's getting curious and saying, what is it that I need to learn from this in order to be better and more prepared for the next thing? And then I'm sure you've taken on a deal or a circumstance or a situation or a property or a client where you're like, I've never done this before, but if you don't do it, somebody else might, and they might be less qualified or not care as much or take advantage of that situation. Any kind of cool stories to share on something that maybe was a challenge, you were fearful and anxious about going into it, but did it anyways? Investment
Yeah,
or otherwise.
so I have certainly made investments with little to no knowledge about how that was going to work out, and that's part of just being an investor and being part of the real estate industry. It doesn't matter how long you've been in it, at some point you're going to run into something you've never seen before. And if you're not willing to just say, okay, I'm going to figure this out, then it's really hard to make it to the next level or get beyond that particular struggle. One of the second real estate investment deal that I did it in a partnership with my parents. And we bought this property sight unseen. It was a great deal. I probably should have seen it before I bought it because when I did see it, there was a giant hole in the back of the building, and it turned out that we spent as much repairing just one of the two structures than we did on the entire acquisition. And so, it was a big challenge for us because at one point we ran out of cash to be able to continue the renovations. And so we just had to get creative. We had to start asking ourselves the question, where can I find more money? Who do I know that has money? And we just had to go out and figure it out. I could have just as easily thrown my hands up and said, I'm out of money, I'm out of options, I don't know what else to do, and just lost. But we made the decision that we were going to just figure it out. And so we ended up borrowing private money from somebody that we knew. We gave them a great interest rate on the money that we borrowed, and then worked diligently to finish our project and get them paid back before too long had elapsed. And today that deal makes us great money. But there was a lot of concern and a lot of mistakes made on the front end of that. It's not about whether or not you're going to make mistakes, because you are. It's what you're going to say to yourself, what questions you're going to ask yourself when those happen, instead of asking why me, or anything like that. You just have to take the position of asking yourself, okay, well, who do I know that can help me? What needs to happen? What's the first thing I can do to start moving forward? And if you take that position in each of those scenarios,
Mhm.
then there's nothing that you can't do, as long as you ask yourself the right kinds of questions, like, what's the first thing I could do? Who can I call that might have an idea on how I move forward? And don't be afraid to reach out to people and just ask for help.
Love that. Our team has a saying, it's just do the next right thing. And every time that there's a challenge, going through that experience, having the challenges that you had, did it change how your process or anything that you did on the next deal?
Well, I definitely didn't buy. I've not bought anything sight unseen since. So that was a big lesson learned in that one. Outside of that, I think I also decided that I'm not a big fan of big renovation projects, but I also do know now that as a real estate investor, I make money by solving problems.
Mm,
And the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity for me or for my clients, that is. And so when you get into this industry, it's all about solving problems at that point.
for sure, for sure. Well, it's very cool, like you said, these things that some might see as like the punishment, the loss, it actually it's an opportunity, and it created clarity for you in the sense of, okay, we don't buy property sight unseen, or we do lower intensity renovation projects, and then it creates that conviction that you just then move forward even more powerfully in the area that you know you're working on. So absolutely love that. So the best thing about like the experience that we get to go through and the challenges, the trials, the tribulations that have to do with pursuing our goals in an area that is of interest to us or passionate or purposeful, I think it's like an obligation, a duty to create clarity or give that next person who resonates with us an opportunity to maybe get there a little faster or with a little less pain. Do you have any recommendations, any advice for somebody who's listening? You resonate with them and they just need a little extra boost to get into taking action. That's like what I always say, just take the action. There's no right deal. What kind of advice would you give to a house hack or a first time investor just looking at the opportunity?
Well, for house hackers, I would tell them that time in the market is more important than timing the market. So if you can afford to buy now, buy now. And house hacking is not about living rent free right away or living completely free right away. Chances are you will still have some cost of living when you're house hacking because it's really hard, especially here in Central Florida. It may be different in different markets, but it's really hard to find a property that's got enough units where you're going to collect enough rent that it'll cover the mortgage entirely and you can live completely rent free. But you can usually do the math. And if your cost of living is going to be less than if you were renting your own place, then it's still a good opportunity. And time in the market is more important than timing the market, right? Time is your best friend when it comes to real estate. So the sooner you can get into that first deal and get your sea legs under you, and start telling people, yeah, I'm an investor now, I think that's really important. So do it sooner rather than later and just never sell. 10 years from now, you'll say, thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you convincing me to do that. And for first time investors, it's really just about doing that first deal. And chances are it's not going to be a home run. Just look for a base hit. Again, the rule applies: buy it, keep it for the next 10 years. If it's going to at least pay for itself in year one, to me, that's a pretty good opportunity for somebody that's just starting out, especially if you're buying it off of the MLS, which is what I recommend for most new investors. Buy through traditional methodologies where you have the most amount of protections in a sale. Yeah, you may not get the best deal buying through the MLS, because wholesalers and direct to seller stuff can be cheaper, but there's bigger risks when you go that route, especially when dealing with wholesalers that may or may not have the same level of ethics as you. And they tend to fudge their numbers on their after repair value and on their repair budget and all the different things. And so just get started as soon as you can and don't sell. Sit on it. And 10 years later, you'll turn around and go, wow, what a great decision. And I'm a product of that, right? I bought my first deal a little over 10 years ago, and it's worth more than double what I initially paid for it. I'm in the process of turning over the tenant that I had in that place for almost 10 years. And, I self managed that property. I learned a lot of great lessons, like don't self manage. So Uh, that's out there too. It was penny wise and pound foolish in hindsight for me to self manage my own property because I'm not a great property manager and I'm a little bit of a softie. If people give me a sob story, I'll give them a little more rope. But unfortunately, people tend to just take advantage of you
Oh,
over time.
absolutely. Oh, yeah. There's a little bit of a sense of entitlement in the society in general, and that's probably one of the most eye-opening shifts in becoming a landlord is you want to be a bleeding heart. You want to help. You're about betterment because that's why we're investing in real estate, but it really can be a challenge for the mom and pop small business that's investing in real estate. Like that mortgage has to get paid one way or the other. And so if you don't pay rent, you're literally taking food off of my kids' table. And I've had those direct conversations in our journey of self-management. Gosh, you said so many great things that I was like, I just need to stop here and interrupt. But I think I'm going to encourage the title of this be your time in the market is more important than timing the market, because I love the bull and the bear chart where I mean you just cannot time the market and just sit there, stay there, be consistent. Don't realize a loss by trying to sell or to liquidate when timing is not right, when you're just doing it based on emotion and panic. And then what was coming to me in the background is like I've seen ego and pride hinder progress. And I know for myself, some of those best opportunities came when I was just willing to sacrifice. I was willing to house hack and share my domain with an unknown party, but I also have made some great friendships through having that ADU that I rent out or that full finished basement with a little kitchen, locking it off and turning that into a revenue generating part of the property. Any encouragement mindset that is around people, setting that ego aside or taking that short-term sacrifice for that long-term win.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest thing to remember is that statistically, the first property you buy is not your dream home, anyways. It's just not. Statistically, you're not going to live in it more than 8 years, anyways. And so, if you can adopt that mentality that this is just a stepping stone to greater things, then you can put up with a lot for a year. I mean, I look back at some of the places I lived in when I was in my early 20s, and they were not great locations. And so when I think about that, you can deal with a lot for a short amount of time, and a year is not that long in when you look at the grand scheme of things. I mean, we're already halfway through this year in 2025, and it's really hard for me to even believe that because it's gone so quickly. But if you can just set that aside, either if you're single, there's no reason you shouldn't be house hacking. If you're married, okay, I get it, but you could still do it with a duplex or a triplex, right? You can still have your own personal space and then rent out those other units. And it's everything that I do today is not for the Tyler of today. When I buy real estate today, I'm buying it for the 65-year-old version of me.
Mm,
And I just have to think of it that way every time I make an investment because I'm a long-term investor, right? I'm a buy and hold, never sell type of guy. I don't want to fix and flip and give myself another job. So when I buy something, I'm buying it for the older version of me. And so when I get money from that property, it goes into the older version of me's bank account. It doesn't go into mine. And I'm planning, I'm building, I'm preparing myself for the day when I can really truly retire and not have a place that I need to be and I can be 100% work optional. I'm a little bit of a workaholic, so the chances of me not working are pretty low. But I want to be work optional, where I can choose every day whether or not I'm going to show up and do something, or whether or not I'm just going to go hang out with family.
there you go. And the clarity that's there, right? I've had this creative stewing about the why isn't necessarily what drives our motivation. It shows us where the destination is and helps. It's a compass that helps us make the next right decision that leads to that ultimate goal. Well, I could probably continue this for longer than it's good for any of us, but before I let you go, any book recommendation for an active listener that's made it to this point?
Number one book I would recommend to anybody interested in real estate is Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Ooh.
It'll help you shift your mentality as it relates to assets and liabilities, and just give you a clear definition of what is and is not an asset or a liability. And it's a pretty entertaining read, in my personal opinion. And by read, I mean listen, because I'm an audiobook guy. So definitely that one. There's so many other great, self-help, personal growth books I could recommend to people. Another really good audio book series that I enjoyed was The Greatest Collection of Jim Rohn.
Mm,
Jim Rohn is like the father of personal development. You know, people usually know who Tony Robbins is.
mm.
Well,
He's a
Tony learned from
product.
Jim,
Yep.
right? So he just has some really good thought processes in there that can really help to shift the way that people look and see their lives. I think one of the greatest statements he's ever made is don't work harder at your job than you do on your own wealth and on your own skills, right? Because at the end of the day, you won't get rich at a job. You get rich through your own skills and your own personal development. And so, those are the two that I would recommend to folks to help them get started on the right path. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and the greatest works or greatest collections by Jim Rohn.
Beautiful. I was trying to see what you had on the stack right behind you over there.
So on the stack behind me, I've got Book on Estimating Rehab Costs by Jay Scott from the Bigger Pocket series.
Oh yeah.
Life Giving Leader by a guy named Tyler Reagan. I know him personally here in Orlando. Exactly What to Say
Great one.
for Real Estate Agents, which is a great real estate. If you're in sales, it's a killer book. You got to pick one up. $1 Million Real Estate Team by Chris Waters, and then The Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller.
Nice.
The Red Book. Some consider it to be the real estate sales Bible. There's some really great stuff in there. I'm not a full believer in his system, but there's parts and pieces that everybody should pick up.
Great nuggets. One of my favorites will always be The One Thing by Gary Keller. And then what I wanted to touch on was even if you are an investor, you are a salesperson. You're selling yourself to the bank, you're selling yourself to a seller if you're dealing with them directly. So, exactly what to say works no matter what. I mean, shoot, if you're a husband or a wife, you're a salesperson to not each other and to the kids. And to your point, time just continues to go faster and faster. Tyler, thank you so much for your insights. So glad you're in Florida. We have a lot of people who are interested in Florida in the audience. So if you are interested in Orlando, I highly encourage you reach out to Tyler and his team if you're looking to get dual licensed and you want to be a little bit more insightful as you explore being licensed in Florida. Please feel free to reach out to Tyler. We are big fans and we look forward to having him on again. Any parting words for the group?
I realized the last book on the shelf I didn't mention was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is another classic personal development book that everyone should pick up. The last chapter or so is not something that I can get down with, as he talks about us being our own gods. But outside of that, every 90% of the book is gold in the way he approaches just being able to use our minds, finding a problem, and building a service that solves that problem. And that's how you can become rich.
Beautiful. Love it. And clearly, reading makes an impact. So if you haven't picked up a book in a minute, you just got a bunch of resources and options to choose from. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thanks for tuning in to Invested Souls.
We hope you found our insights valuable and feel inspired to elevate your real estate and relationship goals.
If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us.
Follow us on social media for more tips and updates, or visit bradandjamieflanagan.com. And to find out more about our Real Estate Wealth Accelerator, don't hesitate to reach out.
Until next time, keep investing in your future and nurturing your relationships.
Thanks for listening to Invested Souls.